Valentine's Day. It's supposed to be a celebration of love, a day for grand romantic gestures, candlelit dinners, and heartfelt promises. But for some, the day of love turns into a day of unimaginable tragedy. A single stupid decision, a moment of carelessness, or a shocking act of violence can transform a romantic evening into a final, fatal memory. Today, we're exploring the most stupid and horrifying deaths that have ever happened on Valentine's Day. Case 1. The Final Turn. On the evening of February 14th, 2025, 58-year-old Patricia Fardro de Cardona and her 60-year-old husband, Hugo Cardona Valencia, were driving home in Pembroke Pines, Florida. It was Valentine's night, and they were likely reflecting on a quiet, romantic evening together. They were in their Ford Fusion, a familiar car on familiar streets, just minutes from the comfort of their home. But elsewhere in the city, a tragedy was brewing. A 17-year-old driver, with 3 friends in his car, was treating the public roads like his own personal racetrack. He was reportedly flying through the 45-mile-per-hour zone at speeds approaching 80 miles per hour, a reckless display of teenage bravado. As Patricia and Hugo approached an intersection and began to make a turn, their worlds collided in the most violent way imaginable. The speeding car, driven by the teenager, slammed into the side of their Ford Fusion with catastrophic force. The impact was so immense that it literally tore the Cardonas' vehicle in half, splitting the car into 2 mangled pieces of metal. First responders arrived at a scene of utter devastation. Patricia was pronounced dead at the scene, her life extinguished in an instant. Hugo was found critically injured and was rushed to the hospital, where he fought for his life for a week before succumbing to his injuries. The cause of death for both was massive blunt force trauma. The teenager's decision to drive at such an outrageous speed turned his car into a missile. Of his own passengers later told investigators that the teen doesn't know how to drive and should be locked up, a chilling testament to the fact that everyone in that car knew the danger they were in. The teen was arrested and charged with serious vehicular offenses, but it was too late for the Cardonas. Their Valentine's Day ended not with flowers and chocolates, but with twisted metal and the wail of sirens, a brutal and entirely preventable tragedy caused by one person's selfish stupidity. Case 2. The 6-month anniversary. For 21-year-old Daniel Dan Amos and his 20-year-old wife, Kayla, Valentine's Day 2016 was extra special. It marked their 6-month wedding anniversary, a small but meaningful milestone for the young newlyweds. They were out for a drive in Maryland, a simple romantic celebration of their love and the life they were building together. They were young, in love, and had their whole future ahead of them. But on that same night, 28-year-old Lauren Renee Scott made a decision that would shatter their future forever. She had been drinking, but she still chose to get behind the wheel of her car. On a night notorious for alcohol-related incidents, Scott lost control of her vehicle and crashed head-on into the Amosi's car. The impact was devastating. The couple's anniversary date, a celebration of their life together, instantly became the scene of their deaths. Both Daniel and Kayla died from the blunt force trauma they sustained in the crash. Their lives, so full of promise, were cut short in a flash of violence and negligence. Instead of waking up the next day to memories of a romantic evening, their families were woken up with the news that their children were gone. Lauren Renee Scott eventually pleaded guilty to 2 counts of negligent manslaughter. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. But no amount of jail time could ever bring back the 2 young lives she had stolen. The Ford news coverage of the tragedy repeatedly highlighted the heartbreaking irony of the situation. A couple killed on the very day they were celebrating 6 months of marriage. It was a stark and brutal reminder of the devastating consequences of drunk driving, a stupid, selfish choice that turned a day of love into a day of mourning. Case 3. The evening stroll. Sometimes, the simplest romantic gestures are the most meaningful. For a middle-aged couple in Covina, California, a quiet walk through their neighborhood was a cherished routine. On Valentine's Day 2025, Richard and his girlfriend, Carmen, decided to do just that. They were taking a romantic evening stroll, hand in hand, enjoying the cool night air. Tragically, both Richard and Carmen had a history of loss. They had both lost partners or children in previous car accidents, a shared grief that had likely brought them closer together. Their walk was a moment of peace, a quiet celebration of the love they had found in each other. Around 7:30 p.m., as they walked along a residential street, their peaceful evening was shattered. A car approached from behind. Carmen later recounted the terrifying moments before the impact. "I didn't see any lights. I didn't hear any noise," she said. The car struck them from behind without any warning, a silent, deadly force in the darkness. The impact threw Richard into the curb and knocked Carmen unconscious. When she came to, she found Richard lying on the ground, his voice silenced forever. Richard had suffered a catastrophic head injury and died at the scene. Carmen survived, but with serious injuries and the unbearable emotional trauma of losing another loved one to a senseless accident. The driver's actions were inexplicable. To be driving on a dark residential street without headlights, or with such a profound lack of attention, was a display of gross negligence. For Richard and Carmen, it was a routine walk on a familiar street. They had no reason to believe they were in danger. But a driver's stupid, reckless behavior turned their romantic Valentine's walk into a scene of death and devastation. Carmen's haunting words, "The next thing I know is that his voice stopped," serve as a chilling epitaph for a love cut short. Case 4. The movie date. For Angelia Webster and her boyfriend, Chris Norris, Valentine's Day 2024 was filled with excitement and anticipation. The young couple from Birmingham, Alabama, was expecting a baby and were eagerly planning a gender reveal party. On Valentine's evening, they headed out for a movie date, a classic romantic outing to celebrate their love and the new life they were about to bring into the world. They left home, full of hopes and dreams for their future, and were never seen alive again. When the couple failed to return home, their families grew worried and reported them missing. For 2 agonizing days, their whereabouts were a mystery. Then, on February 16th, police made a grim discovery. They found the couple's white Ford Taurus parked, and inside were the bodies of Angelia and Chris. Both had been shot multiple times. Their Valentine's date had ended in a brutal double homicide. The police immediately opened an investigation, but there were no immediate suspects. The case drew public outrage. A young, pregnant woman and her partner murdered in their car on a night that was supposed to be a celebration of love. Unlike many of the other cases we're covering, this one isn't about a stupid decision made by the victims. Angelia and Chris didn't do anything reckless. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their story is a tragic example of how Valentine's Day romance can collide with the brutal reality of street violence. It's a heartbreaking contrast, a reminder that even when you do everything right, tragedy can still find you. The family's excitement about the upcoming gender reveal party, a celebration of new life, was replaced by the horror of planning a double funeral. A police spokesperson called it a heartbreaking discovery, a sentiment that barely scratches the surface of this senseless loss. Case 5. The driveway dispute. Arguments are a normal part of any relationship, But for one Pennsylvania couple, a Valentine's Day dispute escalated into a fatal tragedy due to a moment of pure, thoughtless negligence. On February 14, 2019, 66-year-old Deborah "Debbie" Peterson and her 69-year-old husband, Mitchell, were at their home in Palmer Township. They got into an argument, the kind of domestic spat that happens in countless homes every day. The argument spilled out into the driveway as they were about to leave in their SUV. During the heated exchange, Deborah got out of the vehicle and stood in the driveway. Mitchell, still in the driver's seat and presumably still angry, decided to back the SUV up. He later told police that he believed she was clear of the vehicle, but she wasn't. She was in his blind spot, a fatal position that he failed to confirm before putting the car in reverse. The large SUV rolled backwards and ran over Deborah, crushing her beneath its weight. Emergency crews responded to reports of a woman being struck in a driveway, but it was too late. Deborah was pronounced dead at the scene from catastrophic crush injuries. The police, in their initial reports, framed it as a tragic accident. They specifically noted that she was out of view when he reversed, a detail that underscores the preventable nature of the incident. It's a horrifying example of how a mix of anger and carelessness can turn a simple argument into a deadly event. A moment of inattention, a failure to take a simple precaution, and a Valentine's Day dispute ended with a wife dead in her own driveway, killed by her own husband. Case 6. The Secret Rendezvous. For Richard and Stacy Shuck, Valentine's Day had a special tradition. The married couple would exchange cards and gifts at a secluded, romantic spot. It was their private little ritual. On February 14, 2010, Stacy told her 46-year-old husband, Richard, that she had chosen a new spot for their exchange: Belton Bridge Park in Hall County, Georgia. She told him to go there after work and wait for her. It was supposed to be a romantic surprise, but it was a setup for a cold-blooded murder. Richard, trusting his wife, did as he was told. He drove to the isolated, pitch-black park and waited for Stacy to arrive. He was waiting for a romantic rendezvous, but what was waiting for him was a hired killer. As Richard stood near his truck, a man emerged from the darkness and shot him 5 times, twice in the abdomen, once in the chest, and twice in the face. It was a brutal execution-style killing. About half an hour later, Stacy arrived at the park, found her husband's body, and called 911, pretending to be a shocked and grieving widow. Investigators, however, were immediately suspicious. Richard's valuables hadn't been taken, ruling out a simple robbery. The investigation soon uncovered a sinister murder-for-hire plot. Stacy, who had a history of financial problems and affairs, had conspired with her personal trainer, Reginald Coleman, to have her husband killed. Another woman, Lenitra Ross, acted as the go-between. The most chilling detail to emerge was the prearranged code. After the murder was committed, Ross sent a text message to Stacy that simply said, "Happy Valentine's Day." It was the signal that Richard was dead, and that Stacy could now go to the park and discover the body. Richard's stupid decision was trusting his wife and agreeing to meet her in such a vulnerable location. He overlooked numerous red flags in his marriage, and his desire for a romantic Valentine's surprise led him directly into a deadly ambush. Case 7. The Lake Getaway. In early February 2025, just before Valentine's Day, 38-year-old Joycelyn Nicole Wilson and her fiancé, Gary Jones, a man in his 40s and a respected track and field coach, checked into a lakeside hotel on Lake Oconee, Georgia. They were there for a romantic weekend getaway to celebrate Gary's 50th birthday. It was a time for celebration, a romantic escape for the engaged couple. During their stay, they took a small 12-foot boat out onto the vast lake, traveling about 7 miles from their hotel. What happened next is unclear, but later, other boaters made a disturbing discovery. They found the couple's small boat circling unmanned near the Wallace Dam. The boat had signs of damage, suggesting it had struck a dock or some other structure. A massive search was immediately launched. The next day, authorities found Joycelyn's body floating in the water about half a mile from the empty boat, but Gary was nowhere to be found. The search continued, a desperate effort involving dozens of people. The local sheriff, Howard Sills, commented that he had never seen this. Many people searching on Lake Oconee or Lake Sinclair. It was a testament to the community's hope of finding him alive. But that hope faded with each passing day. It wasn't until a month later that Gary's body was finally recovered from the lake. The medical examiner ruled both deaths as accidental drownings connected to the boating incident. The couple's stupid decision was likely a combination of factors: operating a small boat a long distance from their hotel, possibly in low-light conditions, and getting too close to the hazardous area around the dam and docks. It's a tragic reminder that even a peaceful lake can be a dangerous place. A romantic birthday and Valentine's getaway ended in a double drowning, leaving 2 families to mourn the loss of a couple who had been on the verge of starting their new life together. Case 8. The Dream Vacation. In June of 2023, 28-year-old Abby Lutz and her 41-year-old boyfriend, John Heathcote, were on a dream vacation at the Holayos Rancho Pescadero, a luxury resort in Baja California Sur, Mexico. The couple from Newport Beach, California, were enjoying a romantic getaway, the kind of trip that fills social media feeds with pictures of sunshine and cocktails. But their idyllic vacation soon took a sinister turn. During their stay, both Abby and John began to feel extremely sick. They believed they had a bad case of food poisoning, a common ailment for tourists. They went to a local hospital for treatment and were eventually sent back to their hotel room, still assuming it was just a stomach bug. Their fatal mistake was returning to the same room. Days later, after they failed to meet up with Abby's father as planned, hotel staff went to check on them. They found the couple unconscious in their room. Paramedics were called, but it was too late. Both Abby and John were dead. The cause of death wasn't food poisoning. It was something far more insidious: carbon monoxide poisoning. Investigators believe that improper ventilation at the resort allowed the odorless, colorless, and deadly gas to fill their room while they slept. A faulty or poorly vented gas appliance was likely the culprit. The couple had misread the symptoms of severe poisoning, headaches, dizziness, nausea, as food poisoning. That stupid but understandable mistake cost them their lives. When they returned to their room, they were walking back into a death trap. Abby's family later stated that they were told the deaths were due to improper venting of the resort. The tragedy sparked an investigation and raised serious questions about the safety standards at luxury resorts. For Abby and John, their romantic Mexican getaway ended in a silent, toxic death, a horrifying end to what should have been the trip of a lifetime. From reckless drivers and domestic disputes to elaborate murder plots and silent, invisible poisons, these stories are a chilling reminder that tragedy can strike anywhere, at any time. On a day that is meant to celebrate love. These couples met a violent and untimely end, their romantic plans shattered by a single, stupid decision. They serve as a brutal warning that love can't protect you from the consequences of negligence, violence, or pure, dumb luck.